President Trump saying once again that fake news is distorting democracy, and the media is not taking that well. To the dailymail.com White House correspondent Francesca Chambers on if the media is actually more thin-skinned than the president, they say, is really thin-skinned. You know, we go back and forth on this, and I think the media is notoriously thin-skinned, but I think this president is thin-skinned about it too. So the better part of valor might be for him to ignore the fact and let them be the thin-skinned, little thin-skinned people they are. What do you think?
Well, I think the difficulty for journalists, Neil, is that when the president attacks them, they feel the need to defend themselves. Everyone talks about how this president has a historically low approval rating. We all know that the media also has a very low approval rating. And so I think that journalists feel when he attacks their news organization, just attacks journalists broadly, they have to fight back and say that, of course, we're not putting fraudulent reports out there. Of course, the people
But here's the problem with that, Francesca. You don't do this, and I think most journalists try not to do it, but it becomes almost reflexive in their bias and their advocacy. They hate the guy, and they'll, you know, and maybe for a good reason. He rips them apart and says outlandish stuff about him. Half the stuff he says that's fake is stuff that started with him. I readily agree with that. But he's feeding the beast, and they are acting beastly in return and going after him in a way that normally wouldn't be the case unless he acted that way.
Well, it has become a very cyclical process, as you pointed out. First, he says something about journalists, so then journalists fire back at him, so then he hits journalists back on Twitter. But the thing I would point out there, too, is that when the White House keeps saying that journalists and the media aren't focused on Donald Trump's accomplishments, on President Trump's accomplishments, he's also the one who keeps tweeting these things at the media instead of just not talking about those things and focusing on Made in America Week, which is what they're saying this weekend at the White House.
Francesca, I fully agree with that. I think, you know, I'm all for him tweeting, for example, but tweet on message, keep to the message. This Made in America Week, very good message, stay to that, but when you veer off and you're going back into your son, I understand defending your son and all that, you're just, you know, feeding more ammunition in there. Having said it, do you think this will change? I don't even know if it makes a difference, and we're going to discuss this with Ari Fleischer and others. I mean, this idea that changing the briefings, you know, is ever going to improve these relations. I think they're really bad right now. I don't see them getting a whole lot better. What do you think?
I think that the president has made it clear how he feels about the media, Neil, and he has repeatedly said these things, calling them the enemy of the American people, calling into question the anonymous sources that reporters are using, even as the White House, by the way, continuously briefs on background with White House officials that we're not allowed to say who they are in our own reporting.
Fair enough.
But they keep saying that, oh, we can't know who these U.S. officials are in some of the reports that these outlets are doing. So right now it seems, like you said, that it's going to continue on down this path. We have another off-camera briefing today with Sean Spicer, it sounds like, who we haven't seen at the podium in quite a while. So we'll see if he shows up today or whether it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
But resist the temptation to respond tit for tat. For example, I always let people know on this show, Francesca, the president doesn't like to come on this show. It goes back many months ago. That's fine. He's absolutely free not to come on or not like me. But I'm just saying, to feed the beast and me to get personally invective with him or nasty with him, that wouldn't do anyone any good. So I'll cover the good, the bad, the in-between. I just think that a lot of journalists, and we all have our pride, myself included, that you get so annoyed when something comes up or you catch the president something that you'll disproportionately go after it because you hate the guy.
Well, speaking for myself, Neil, I'm trying to focus on the facts here. And again, what the White House is doing. But I think, again, that there's no doubt that there has become a relationship of animosity between the White House and some news outlets that then those news outlets are hitting back at him.
But you're not vindictive. You know what I mean? Like, you'll report the bad, like you just did here. You'll also report the good whenever there's something else going on. But I'm telling you, it is human nature, and believe me, sometimes justified human nature, for people to go for the jugular when they feel they've been treated unfairly or, you know, harpooned on a subject like this. I'm just saying you got to be careful, right? Me.
Yeah,
You.
and I think again we're seeing that on both sides. That's why the president is doing this. He thinks that he's being treated unfairly by these news outlets and thinks that it's affecting his approval rating and that he has to hit back. I've had White House advisors tell me that he is just reacting to what he's seeing, and that when he hits these outlets and hits these reporters, it's because they've said something about him that he feels that he needs to defend himself on.
We're moments away from him tweeting on you, so we'll see what that's all about. But Francesca Chambers, thank you very, very much. I always appreciate it.
Thank you.